Hey guys, tonight we're diving face first into a beauty regime that's less about skincare and more about survival. The Georgian era. Yes, the age of powdered wigs, extravagant parties and beauty secrets that could put you 6 feet under faster than you can say snuff. Get ready for a history lesson that's stickier than your grandma's old perfume. And trust me, it's just as overwhelming. Before we embark on this journey through toxic cosmetics and the questionable choices of our ancestors, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy the chaos we create here. Also, let me know in the comments what vintage beauty methods you've tried that turned out to be outright disasters. Just remember, your aunt's mascara may still be lurking under your bathroom sink, but tonight's story will likely make it seem harmless. So dim the lights, switch on a fan for that soothing hum, and make sure you're comfy. You might want to tuck your feet under the covers. No need to have any rogue cosmetics sneaking up on you. Now, let's think for a moment. Have you ever wondered how people survived the painful pursuit of beauty? Why on earth did anyone ever think lead-based foundation was a good idea? What motivates someone to apply a concoction made of crushed beetles to their face? Did they ever regret trying to look like living porcelain dolls? If they had to do it all over again, would they roll with the pink cheeks or just stick to the basics? Congratulations! You've just woken up in the year 1765, the peak of Georgian fashion. Grab your most toxic rouge and hope it doesn't get too close to your bloodstream. Ready? Let's go! Picture this. You've just put on a powdered wig the weight of a small cat, layered with curls and topped with feathers that could double as a bird sanctuary. How do you even walk through a door without becoming a human doorframe? The scent of sandalwood fills the air, mixed with a hint of something old? That's right. You've entered a world where your hairstyle can both elevate and suffocate your social life. As you glide into the lavish parlour, a myriad of powdered wigs bob in your periphery, each more extravagant than the last. The men are rocking styles so big and elaborate, it's a wonder any necks remain unbroken. You can practically hear the grating whispers. Was that a peacock? Or merely the fashion statement of Lord Cronenberg? But it's not just the size of their wigs that sets them apart. It's the layers of white powder, an homage to both style and a questionable personal hygiene regime. Who needs water when you have the essence of a well-fed squirrel decorating your head? Fashion sacrifice has reached a new low. Quietly panicking, you shuffle toward a nearby buffet table, hoping for solace in hors d'oeuvres. Instead, you find a delightsome spread of maple syrup-soaked cakes, designed to tempt your taste buds, but seem destined to trap them in a layer of dental despair. You cautiously select a petit four, and as you pop it into your mouth, you inwardly pray for someone to invent toothpaste. Because honestly, these little confections may do more for your waistline than your oral hygiene. Suddenly, a cacophony erupts from the grand staircase. You look up to see Lady Ashworth cascading down like a sparkling waterfall, all ribbons and royal blues. Her wig is piled high as if she attended an all-you-can-eat buffet at the Feather and Wigs Emporium. But in her eagerness to greet you, she misjudges the bottom step and stumbles, the weight of her extravagant hairpiece pulling her merrily down like a large and terrifyingly graceful bowling ball. Her powdered wig spills clouds of white dust, like the aftermath of a confetti cannon gone rogue. "Help!" she cries, clawing desperately at the air, but let's be honest. Helping her would involve more than just catching her. It would involve salvaging societal structure, not to mention an entire cafe worth of macarons trapped somewhere in that voluminous disaster. You notice the laughter of guests morphing into screams of horror as feathers fly, and suddenly you want to be anywhere else. A medieval plague doctor, a sea captain, or even a potato. As Lady Ashworth finally rights herself, she feigns a grandiosity that's almost impressive. "A grand entrance was my intent, dear companions," she declares, flicking sparkle-dusted fingers at her dishevelled wig. Would it even be a party without a spectacle? Ah, yes, it helps to be a dramagenic. That wig alone could be holding half of the room's atmosphere hostage in its grotesque embrace. Overhearing a nearby conversation that shifts to beauty regimens, you learn that many of your peers have subscribed to a scented secret. Yes, today's fragrance palette ranges from lavender to, unbelievably, ambergris. Wondering whether they went out to sea only to come back smelling like they wrestled a whale, you can't help but reel at the thought of such pungent dedication. Before you can escape the whimsical chaos, someone leans in, whispering that the latest trend is to adorn wigs with not only feathers but actual flowers picked directly from the gardens, the kind beautifully painted, except now they come packed with bugs. Nothing says high society beauty like a spontaneous case of the wig beetles, right? And just when you think this soaring spectacle of hair and fragrance can't get any more uneasily glorious, you catch sight of the bewitching couple unloading aromatic tubes of face-whitening creams at their station. Apparently, looking ethereally pale, almost ghostly, is still on trend. Who needs summer sun when you can effectively simulate the inner glow of a Victorian ghost? Now that's ambition. With each awkward laugh, cascading feather, and shockingly sweet pastry, you realise this isn't just a wigs and jeering party. It's a wild ride reflecting the lengths people go for beauty. Decades may pass, trends may change, and yet, here you are, a footnote in a ridiculous chapter of humanity. So as you adjust your own wig, a floppy mass compared to those around you, let it be a reminder that while beauty may be pain, it truly is a spectacle filled with delights, disasters, and just a sprinkle of genuine fun. So, as the party rages on and the wigs threaten to stage their own revolution, take a breath and simply enjoy the absurdity of it all. Because life, like a towering powdered wig, is a curious mix of elegance and mayhem, heaped high with the chance of disaster sitting right at its peak. Ever tried to create a flawless complexion using paints meant for walls? Welcome to Georgian beauty, where foundation mostly contained lead. You remember that annoying art teacher who said, "Don't eat the paint"? Well, centuries ago, they didn't just ignore that advice, they embraced it. Imagine applying a layer so toxic it could reasonably be your final layer. Talk about a commitment to beauty. Now, put yourself in the shoes, or rather, the knee-high, lace-up boots, of a Georgian lady preparing for a night out at the theatre. You'd start with a base layer, waiting patiently for your maid to prepare the horrifying concoction. The lead was mingled with a few improved recipes, perhaps a touch of rice powder for texture, or some crushed algae for that natural glow. Unless you define natural as looking like you've just survived a swampy encounter with a haunted cottage, by the time you're finished layering the foundation, because no one pays attention to just one coat, you're quite literally painting your face with potential dread from pesky health consequences. Why? Because every noble soiree awaited, dressed to the nines with faces so pale it'd make a ghost jealous. Want to achieve the coveted aristocratic look? The rule was simple: the paler the better. If you weren't looking ghostly enough, a quick touch-up with white lead was only a speck of makeup away. Now, let's rewind for a second. Have you ever noticed how foundations today are so carefully crafted? Sure, there are more shades of pale than you can count, but no one is throwing in actual poison. Fast forward to the Georgians, who didn't recognise their profound mistake until the damage was done. Talking about damage! Imagine going to your year's most important event, the ball, and realising that your once charming pallor is now evolving into a caustic tan not seen since the days of misapplied copper. It's beauty's way of saying, Maybe less is more. But moving on to another facet of this beauty fiasco. Your base layer looks somewhat acceptable, but what's next? A little blush, perhaps? Well, thoughts of rosy cheeks filled with all-natural beetroot juice might have been wonderful, but in reality, you'd most likely dab bits of mercurial red for effect. Yes, this perplexing little conversion from root vegetable to chemical burn was surprisingly popular. Rather like putting your loved ones through intense chemistry classes, everyone could feel the heat, but their complexions never quite glowed as intended. And while we're on the subject of troublesome beauty products, let's talk eyebrows. Ah, the classic pencil-thin look. Instead of a gentle pencil, how about the wax from the local streets, and a pinch of that lovely lead-based colour? Just imagine the late-night conversations as ladies competed for the thinnest brows. Lucida. Oh, it was definitely a magnificent game of eyebrow roulette with side eyes, thrown for good measure. Did I mention that the only real relief came only when someone passed out from the headache? Of course, we must mention the end-of-the-day beauty removal routine, or lack thereof. You might feel like a work of art, but it becomes a masterpiece of misery the moment you try and wash off that lead-heavy look. Picture a dimly lit chamber filled with silk fabrics, and the only thing standing in the way of your noble complexion is a basin of water. Did you really think it was that easy? Every scrubbing motion brought the dirty truth. Once that poison set in, it was like painting over existing graffiti. Anything you apply from here just becomes an existential crisis. However, like many things in history, the mutations of beauty products resolved itself to some extent. As the desire to look aristocratic remained, the effects of earlier practices begat new concoctions, sometimes with less lead, but still with historically bad intentions. The noble classes desperately sought to offer their appearances without ending up bedridden after one charmingly disastrous ball. So let's take a moment to reflect. By now, perhaps we've learned that the stakes in the Georgian beauty standards were incredibly high. Navigating beauty trends back then was not just a pursuit for a pretty face. It was, literally, a high-stakes gamble involving fevers, stylistic misadventures, and an alarming number of questionable raw materials. Because what we perceive as beauty has long been guided by a history filled with as much irony as it has substance. So next time you apply foundation, take a moment to thank whatever beauty god you believe in that lead isn't in the ingredients list. Only our ancestors could possibly follow those toxic traces to the galas floating in the ether of British folklore. You know how sometimes you wish your cheeks were as rosy as a sunset? In Georgian times, that could potentially mean rolling around in crushed beetles. Yes, you heard right. Your natural blush could have come directly from nature, nature being a very concerned ladybug. The results? A rosy glow, and possibly a case of severe gastrointestinal distress. Picture this. You're at a lovely ball, all eyes on you, and there you are, dazzling in pale silk, finishing touches on your beauty perfected with a generous sprinkling of carmine, a colour derived from, wait for it, cochineal insects. Yes, those little buggers were not only a snack for birds, they were the basis of high society beauty standards. Talk about multitasking. Now, applying this blush was no delicate endeavour. Oh no. It usually involved a somewhat grim-sided approach. Women would take these beetles, crush them to a fine powder, and mix them with oils or even water before applying the mixture to their cheeks. In theory, it was supposed to be the beauty equivalent of painting a masterpiece. In reality, it resembled more of a grotesque art installation called Fear the Red. One wrong dab, and you could be mistaken for a living stop sign. And if you were too heavy-handed, well, now you are both an attraction and an abomination. Can you imagine the conversations? Darling, you've gone a tad too vibrant with a cochineal. I can see you across the room. but at least your cheeks are bright enough to see through the haze of this horrid tobacco smoke. All while you blush even deeper, gratefully clinging to the notion that it's just harmless beetle pigment. Except, of course, those pigments could also cause allergic reactions or, initiate a lovely bout of dermatitis. As the charming candlelight flickered around you, the dilemma of beetle blush was far from your only concern. If you weren't worried about malfunctioning facial paint, you had the additional hazard of smudging. Imagine reaching for a delicate handkerchief or a glass of port and accidentally wiping away crimson glam, only to leave behind a ghastly streak of raw chaos across your face. At this point in time, reapplying cochineal meant one thing. The evening truly wasn't over yet, and your cheeks could take another beating. The pursuit of beauty didn't stop at the cheeks either. Just when you thought being red-cheeked was the pinnacle of finesse, the relentless standards demanded more. To achieve a full, heart-stirring, natural flush, women were known to pinch their cheeks before arriving at balls and salons, an act that could leave you resembling an overly excited turkey. And if those natural methods weren't yielding the desired effect, the Beatles awaited their fate. It isn't surprising then, was it, that critiques of fashion were often dipped in a layer of dark humour. While ladies dabbed away their woes, or should we say Beatles, gentlemen would joke about their rosy-socked dance partners looking more like freshly cooked shrimp rather than enchanting creatures steeped in quiet confidence. And during this confidence-crushing laughter, some women even took it a step further, addicted to the aesthetic perhaps, by proposing a DIY approach that included berry juice and lead powder for that extra pizzazz, willingly risking both beauty and bodily integrity for a fleeting moment of societal acceptance, summed up the Georgian beauty obsession nicely. But hey, nothing says you're beautiful quite like the risk of lead poisoning. So what was the after-party life like at this wondrous soiree? Well, several hours later, you might find yourself feeling lightheaded, and by lightheaded we mean spinning in a slightly anxious state ready to paint the town. Literally. And while the night winds down, your cheeks may glow fiercely like a beacon, mixing with the chances of beetle-induced chaos. Call it a dual beauty mark, one cheek for your social game and another as a constant reminder of your curiosity-driven choices. In the end, when you think about Georgian beauty, consider the irony. Those who tried to attain beauty through experimental means often resembled their ancestors more, with rosy cheeks they could take to the grave, all while modern society rolls on in awe over cosmetic choices that almost drove women to bankruptcy, if not a trip to the hospital. So, while you're relaxing tonight, remember, beauty troubles might be the stuff of legends, but sometimes they prove that history is just as deadly as it glamorous. Masquerades were the height of elegance, until you learned that some of the attendees were actually wearing face paint laced with mercury. Imagine preparing for a night of merriment, only to discover it's more like playing Russian roulette, or as they called it back then, the genteel game of glam. Will you exit in style or succumb to fevers? As you step into the grand ballroom, your eyes widen at the extravagant display of gowns, powdered wigs, and elaborate masks, each more astonishing than the last. The air is thick with perfume, tension, and, you guessed it, a very real concern for your long-term health. And why is that? Because the charmingly dapper gentleman waltzing by with a mask that would make Shakespeare swoon might just be concealing a face coated in the same toxin used to kill rats. Yes, mercury! Georgian beauty enthusiasts thought that applying this mysterious element to their skin would impart an ethereal glow, effectively transforming them into radiant beings. Little did they know that this gleaming veneer could quickly transition from hot date to how embarrassing, I think I fainted. But who could resist the allure of an instant glow-up, even if that meant dancing with death. As guests twirled around the floor in extravagant gowns, one couldn't help but wonder who was genuinely there for the fun, and who was merely a strolling tragedy waiting to happen. After all, each mask told a story, some of glamour, others of impending doom. You and your date settle in for the night's festivities, only to notice that every few minutes someone excuses themselves with an all-too-loud cough or a graceful swoon. It's almost as if fainting spells have become a fashionable trend. Dying is so last season, you chuckle quietly to yourself, glancing sidelong as the lady in the splendid blue gown keeps dabbling her tissues in what might be a small puddle of unsteady mercury fallout. Yet the ultimate irony is that these same women would later boast about their flawless complexion in the soirees to come, their beauty, hard-earned through layers of toxic paint. And while their heads might spin from the fumes, they kept on dancing, twirling, and laughing, all for the appearance of a good time. As one lady might have quipped, better a merry dance with mercury than a dull night with drabness. As the musicians strike up a jaunty tune, one plucky gentleman attempts to impress his well-masked partner, eager to lean in, perhaps a little too closely. But as he gets closer, he's overwhelmed by an invisible cloud of toxicity wafting from her carefully turned cheeks. The poor guy chokes on his drink, turning a charming moment into a comedic disaster. This dance floor may come with its glamour, but the consequences of beauty come at a cost. Is it any surprise fevers, fatigue and migraines became the uninvited guests of that evening? Amid the beauty and laughter lies a certain irony, an unspoken understanding that glamour was always just a heartbeat away from chaos. Attendees perched nervously at their tables, hands shaking around champagne flutes, half intoxicated by spirits, half terrified of the pestilence that might afflict them at any moment due to mere vanity. Surely none of this offered any comfort when they sat at their vanity mirrors the following morning, dabbing mercury-laden cosmetics onto their skin in hopes of becoming the social butterfly framed in satin. And while today's self-care might include hydrating face masks or the latest in organic serums, Georgian ladies were more likely to throw caution and their prospects of having children straight to the wind as they tossed their paintbrushes into the ring. After all, if you have to play the game, why not go all in behind a mask that could make or break your night? Now, as the evening winds down and the effects of those gleaming masks begin to settle in, the attendees gather for a final hurrah. You can't help but consider, will this go down in history as the best masquerade ball or the beginning of a mercury epidemic? As you weave your way through the now fading crowd, just know that among those shimmering gowns and dazzling masks, a high price is being paid for beauty defined by the fickle whims of fashion. So the next time you encounter a marshmallow-faced influencer raving about the latest glow-up serum, remember, you may have dodged a deadly dose of mercury, but don't take skincare for granted, as the genteel game of glam relies on more than just a charming facade. What price will history hold for modern beauty? Ever sniffed a bouquet and accidentally caught a whiff of arsenic? In the 18th century, ladies would scent their handkerchiefs with all kinds of concoctions that'd leave modern perfumers aghast. The roads were paved with florals, but they didn't realise the only thing more crushing than a bad breakup is a bouquet that's practically a death sentence. Imagine strolling through a garden filled with roses and jasmine, only to find out that your beautiful new fragrance is a devil's brew, composed of toxic substances designed to mask body odour better than a lion tamer at a circus. Was it really worth it? Back in the good old days of Georgian elegance, it wasn't just about smelling good. It was about taking a gamble with your life every time you spritzed on that enchanted perfume. Artificial scents were the norm, and nature's warnings were routinely ignored. Did you know that those delightful fragrances could include deadly concoctions of essential oils, combined with the added charm of ingredients that would put you directly in the grave? It was like playing perfume roulette. Am I getting floral notes of lavender or the sweet scent of impending doom? And yet, ladies flaunted these scents with abandon, as if the smell of impending death grew more fashionable by the day. Let's talk about the ingredients that would make you rethink your choice before heading out for a stroll through your manor's extensive gardens. Take, for example, the popular French lavender, a delightful potion that promised all the charm of a summer garden. In reality, it was often tampered with mercury and lead to make the fragrance long-lasting. Surprise! Your handkerchief is now a sanctuary for toxins, and while you're trying to waft flirtatiously towards the eligible heir across the ballroom, maybe you should be more concerned about his mother, who might be silently plotting to eliminate you over tea. Then there was the infamous golden poudre, which was sprinkled onto everything from linens to ladies. This was actually a fine dust laced with a cocktail of arsenic and poisoned flowers. If you think about it, maybe the ladies thought they were enhancing their radiance, when in fact they were setting themselves up for a floral funeral. Welcome to the party, ladies. You're all so radiant. Did you do something different with your hair? Oh yes, dear. Just a bit of arsenic and a sprig of bittersweet ivy. How about you? But the real spark of scent in Georgian society was the widespread use of flowers. You'd think a bouquet of daisies would brighten your day, wouldn't you? Not when those flowers were liberally dusted with harmful chemicals to maintain their vibrancy. Those stunning violets you buy at the market may as well have a sign that reads, "Handle with care, may cause acute illness." Did they not notice that as they indulged in this sensory delight, they were also creating a health risk rivaling that of a medieval public toilet? As you're preparing for an evening of revelry, you might pick up your scented handkerchief, convinced that nothing could go wrong. But little do you know, that dapper gentleman at the dance is hiding a cough beneath his charming smile, though it's not from the lovely scent wafting from his silk cravat. Nope, he just strolled through the foul-smelling streets, throwing flowers around as if he were some floral Christ figure. One whiff, and you might as well consider it a one-way ticket to rendition, because the bouquet will surely send you off in a fit long before the music dies down. Now, before you roll your eyes and think that maybe modern life is a bit better, let's not forget how we've managed to carry the absurdity of scent forward. Have you ever caught a whiff of something so synthetic that you almost had a hallucination? We may have traded in the arsenic for artificial scent, but we still hold on to those bizarre compound concoctions. The fresh floral raindrop may come from a bottle from a lab, but in a twisted way, it is connecting us with our historical counterparts. So, as you find yourself battling the floral and synthetic scents of your surroundings, take a moment to consider the bizarre legacy of Georgian beauty. Our ancestors, seduced by the allure of a sweet-smelling existence, didn't just dance with the devil, they practically invited it in for tea. So, let's take a moment to raise a glass to scented bamboozlement, and remind ourselves that even the most charming floral fragrance might just be trying to send you to meet your maker under the guise of a delightful evening. Cheers to that. In a time that touted the importance of bathhouses, you'd be surprised to learn that many decided to skip the entire cleaning endeavour altogether. Spoiler alert, your only cleansing options include questionable herbal mixtures and the lingering scent of unwashed mutton. All that remains is a complex web of smells, none of which give you that fresh, clean feeling. Instead, the air thickens with the essence of humanity blending in a rather tragic harmony. Imagine strolling into a Georgian manor, and instead of being greeted by potpourri or lavender, you encounter a symphony of unfiltered reality. Sweat, soot, and sheep byproducts intermingle into a layer of lingering scents that would make a modern nose scream in terror. Now, you might think twice about that warm pint of ale in your hand when you realise that, for many, it was their only source of hydration, because the water supply was often questionable at best. The motto, "cleanliness is next to godliness," wasn't exactly a priority back then. More like the motto was, "If you're not dead, keep wearing the same clothes." People believed that bathing opened the pores, allowing bacteria to waltz right in and do whatever terrible things bacteria do. You can almost picture it. A Georgian gentleman merrily inhaling the aroma of sweat, mixed with a hint of lavender from last week's randomly applied perfume, all while he dodges actual water like it's a bowl of soup thrown by an angry kitchen maid. In this world, a quick rinse was like a dare, an invitation for illness. Some people use lemon juice instead of soap, because nothing says refreshing quite like bathing in citrus and a touch of scurvy panic. Just imagine for a moment applying fresh lemon juice to your underarms. If you ever thought about trying that, I suggest opting just for a boring old stick of deodorant instead. Meanwhile, would-be bathers turn their attention to going for a stroll, otherwise known as the Georgian gym. It was less about fitness and more about avoiding any mention of actual cleanliness. And speaking of cleanliness, let's chat about the bathhouses themselves, which supposedly offered a chance to scrub away the sins of the week. The catch? Bathing was a cooperative experience. It wasn't merely sharing the space, it was sharing the germs. Imagine stepping into a warm pool teeming with a literal tide of bacteria, motherly laughter, and frank discussions on neighbourly ailments. You find yourself surrounded by beautiful ladies who are far too poised to admit they might smell like last week's stew mixed with fear, and the occasional rat that decided it would rather sink than swim. The only saving grace came from the tub's suspiciously scented bubbles, making you second-guess the quality of the ingredients if such a poltergeist suddenly took residence in your water. Most tubs resembled mob scenes, where cleanliness was replaced by splashes, shrieks, and the accidental dunking of toes into questionable territories. Meanwhile, squeals of laughter would erupt over who dared venture into the overflowing waters without really wanting to. Oh, and let's not forget the fashion. The elaborate dresses demanded layers of fabric. Under those layers, the sweat of 100 lives trapped and blended together until the scent became something akin to a botanical garden, fighting a losing battle against an open butcher shop. You'd like to think that at least those corsets held some form of beauty, but even that twisted the body into a pretzel of unexplained smells. At best, personalities rose above the odours, figures of genteel society who could engage in delightful conversation while desperately resisting the impulse to hurl. And when it came to creating romantic scenarios, the stakes rose dramatically. After all, who would want to get too close to that beautiful lady adorned in layers of dress and hidden within a cloud of noxious scents? The gentleman musters his courage, quietly wondering if she had bathed or was simply counting on the aroma of her lavender powder to disguise the mutton beneath. In conclusion, the art of avoiding water in the Georgian period didn't just elevate body odour to an art form, it stitched together a tapestry of shared experiences, olfactory mishaps, and a comically desperate attempt at personal hygiene. So next time you're luxuriating in a hot shower, take a moment to appreciate the fate you've dodged. Because as they say, ignorance is bliss. But for our ancestors, yeah, that was just bath time. If it falls, it's a style choice, they might say. But don't be fooled by the elegance of Georgian hairstyles, they were nightmares in the making. Hairpieces fashioned from animal products, adorned with anything from gems to draping ribbons, all screaming, "Look at me!" You find yourself wondering if you've peaked, or if you're just another hapless victim of a comb's warped ambition. These towering masterpieces, often exceeding a foot in height, demanded the dedication of an architect and the finesse of a surgeon. You'd need a steady hand, a prayer, and a professional-grade miracle if you hope to pull off such gravity-defying styles without ending up in a full-blown hair disaster. As you navigate through an average day in Georgian society, you'd be confronted with countless questions about your hair, each more alarming than the last. How do you achieve that naturally wind-blown look, all while ensuring you didn't offend someone in the room with your unsightly frizz? Heaven forbid you draw attention to your scalp instead of the ivory curls resembling cotton candy. This was a calculated competition. Ladies strutted ahead like multi-layered cakes, laden with expensive ingredients, but secretly terrified of stumbles that could lead to public humiliation, akin to being attacked by a rogue windstorm. All these elaborate hairstyles required equally elaborate maintenance. Just imagine the hours spent under the watchful eye of a stylist, armed with an array of scents and concoctions that would make a potion master weep. Sulphur, pomade, and other unholy mixtures were slathered into your hair, transforming it into a sticky tangle that might just withstand a small tornado. You feel a twinge of envy as you recall the ancient practice of rolling hair onto curling tongs that heated over open flames. Not that you'd consider risking your locks for mere curls. The cavalcades of ladies manoeuvring about the town became a bizarre spectacle, as you'd spot those structural hazards teetering precariously over their heads, each built like a fortified castle. Imagine cowlicks reminiscent of porcupines and hair strands spilling out like defeated flags. Onlookers paused mid-bite of stale bread, their mouths agape at the sight of a noblewoman in palpable distress, her splendid creation wobbling ominously. "Is it a sun hat or a magic trick?" you'd whisper, pondering whether your chance of success hinged on your company's artistic capabilities or a penchant for sheer absurdity. And when it was time to hit the ballroom, oh boy! The festivities offered the chance to let your hair down, figuratively of course. Dancing while precariously balancing a birdcage of the most fabulously ridiculous proportions on your royal crown required skills that would put acrobats to shame. As your partner twirled you around the floor, you'd find yourself in a battle of sorts, dodging lace-fringed hats while trying to avoid impaling innocent bystanders with the brilliant feathers gracefully arranged above your head. Only the brave entered this realm, where compliments floated through the air like petals and barbed remarks lay in wait like hungry lions. "Are you going for a new hairstyle or a new height limit?" would be the faint undertone of collective giggles amid clinking glasses over champagne. Now, as a notable citizen of this fabulous world, you quickly discover that accidents do happen, especially at the mercy of drunken daredevils more interested in your hair than their balance. Witnessing a wig slowly surrendering to gravity would send you into a panic. Is it a style? Or are they auditioning for the role of the disaster? You might mumble to yourself as you clutch the edge of your chair, anxiously observing everyone's subtle glances at the victim teetering on the edge of embarrassment. Down the long ballrooms, the pleading faces of hairpiece wearers reluctantly mingled with those attempting to avoid disaster. Each tousle was a commentary on life's fleeting absurdities and the endless pursuit of grandeur, pairing nobility and chaos in an elegant pas de deux. As laughter echoed into the night, uneven curls and outrageous ornamentation were left behind, twisting into the annals of history, a glamorous reminder that, even in beauty, chaos lurks in the unsuspected corners, waiting for a moment to take a proud hairdo and whip it into pure, unadulterated mayhem. After all, if nothing else, life as a Georgian beauty was nothing more than a hair-raising affair. Let's explore the delightful variety of good old herbal remedies, except when they aren't. The English garden offered up pungent weeds and lovely blossoms, but along with the fresh tea were plants that could deliver quite the unpleasant surprise. Tea's a comfort until you realise it doubled as a herbalist's ruse. Would you like nausea with your Tetley? Imagine pouring yourself a nice cup of chamomile, only to discover it might also double as a ticket to the emergency room if brewed wrong. Herbalists of yore often filled cosy little gardens with plants that looked perfectly harmless, until you caught a whiff that screamed, "Take caution." Take, for instance, the charmingly named foxglove. Beautiful, right? Those delicate purple blossoms, how lovely they seem. But poke a little deeper, and you find out they're packing enough digitalis to send your heart rate soaring into a panic. It's like Mother Nature's way of saying, "Sure, I'll help with those heart palpitations, but first, let's see how close you come to checking out." Imagine sipping your afternoon tea, feeling oh so refined, and then realising it's actually laced with a deadly surprise. Just what you'd hoped for at your neighbour's garden party. And as if that wasn't enough, let's not forget the infamous belladonna, or deadly nightshade. The delicate little flower that promised beauty but could also usher you to your demise faster than you could say, "What's this strange headache?" Back in the day, women truly believed it would widen their eyes and create that mysterious allure long sought after. "Ah yes," they'd say with a dreamy sigh. "What's beauty if not a trip to the great beyond?" Belladonna surely knew how to leave an impression, both from a haunting beauty perspective and from a medicinal failure angle. What about elderberries? A smug little shrub boasting pleasant berries and fragrant flowers. They were the ancient equivalent of cheat day. Sure, a lovely concoction of elderberry syrup could soothe your sore throat, or you could warp your entire system with uncooked berries and find yourself on a first-name basis with a practitioner of medieval medicine. Nothing screams luxury like surviving a foraging mishap, only to wonder if your throat is sore or you've accidentally poisoned your immune system. Another curious visitor to the English garden was the coltsfoot plant, sporting big leaves that looked like they could soothe an elephant's headache. Law said it could cure coughs, but when that ancient wisdom turned out to be rooted in less than great science, people took to calling its side effects unpredictable at best. Folks coughing up their lungs might have opted for tea instead, blissfully ignoring the fine print about potential respiratory issues and possible delirium. "It sounds like a cough remedy," they'd say, sipping their wild concoction. But it might also lead to your worst, most embarrassing dreams played out on repeat. When it came to brewing these botanical beauties, knowledge was everything, with herbalists wielding their experience like a precious potion. They'd boil down plants, often leading to more experimenter-tasting sessions than your average foodie episode gone awry. You might have left your herbalist feeling like Mother Nature herself was tending to your woes, until you passed out at your own birthday party after swallowing one too many experimental brews. Maybe next time stick with chamomile, eh? And let's not overlook the fascinating phenomenon of the tea time. Gatherings were lovely affairs until someone misunderstood the botanicals. Let's celebrate good health with this new blend turned into a lively edition of Guess Who's Visited the Hospital this week. The merriment continued, until someone tragically recited that popular line, "You only live once," while merrily pouring unfiltered herbal brews that sent the entire party spiralling into chaos. As charming as those English gardens were, they masked a potent cocktail of curiosity and consequence. Each sip fancied a wonder, but most likely delivered a lesson in caution. What started as an afternoon delight had the potential to tumble into tales of woe faster than you could retrieve your shockingly unappealing favourite greens. So, the next time you step into that verdant bliss, just remember, nature can be as intoxicatingly beautiful as it is dangerously deceptive. And in the world of Georgian beauty practices, if it doesn't kill you, it might just leave you with a real wild story to tell, or to sip over tea. Dandies in tight-fitting trousers adorned with bejeweled canes seem chic, until you realise those veneer-wearing fellows are sweating toxins right through their lace cravats. Isn't fashion grand? Phew. Just a reminder that when it comes down to it, both style and survival are equally paramount, unless you're a dandy whose wardrobe holds a dark secret. Yes, the dreadfully fashionable men and women of the Georgian era delighted in presenting themselves as the epitome of couture. Their ruffled sleeves, waistcoats tighter than a pair of fresh sausages, and wigs that could house an entire family of sparrows became symbols of status. However, beneath these layers of silk and brocade lurked a dangerous truth. Fashion could make you fabulously dead. Imagine a bustling ballroom, with laughter ringing against the grand chandeliers that probably cost more than most peasants would see in a lifetime. The air is thick with the scent of expensive perfumes and the perspiration of those trying desperately not to wilt like an August flower. But here's the kicker. The very garments that wrapped around them were often laced with toxic substances meant to enhance their appeal. Vivid colours, for instance, were often derived from arsenic-based dyes. Arsenic, you know, that little number that gives fabulous a new twist in the danger department. One minute you're turning heads and the next, well, let's not beat around the bush, meet your maker in style. As you navigate this glamorous yet hazardous scene, you may notice the chandeliers twinkling as much as the twinkling eyes of the ladies trying to appear faintly alluring. What they didn't recognise in their quest for beauty is that heavy lead-infused foundation was their very own ticking time bomb. Just the sort of charming accessory that would guarantee a nasty visit from the Grim Reaper, or worse, a dreadful evening battling skin issues even more grotesque than their own fashion faux pas. Rashes, check. Skin peeling, double check. A desire to run away screaming after realising that pursuing beauty could turn them into a living version of the before in a skincare commercial. Absolutely. Meanwhile, the gentlemen wriggled about in their fashionable attire, wielding canes that served more than just aesthetic purposes. Why, some even used them for defence. Yet the inner joke among the well-dressed was that the weight of their sashes could compress their vital organs just as expertly as a bread maker kneads dough. As if that tight waistcoat wasn't enough to cause a slow, imminent doom, now you have to factor in the ether of flammable powders and tinctures furniture, cushioned around them. But the real show-stopping feature, the wigs, each carefully crafted wig, piled high under the careful watch of skilled wig makers, was as heavy as a barrel of ale, specifically an imperial barrel of ale meticulously brewed to perfection. The sheer weight of these fashion statements could drop anyone's neck faster than a physics lecture in a drowsy classroom. A dandy could easily find himself asking, is my neck strained from the wig, or is it a sign of my impending doom? Spoiler alert, it didn't matter. And as they danced the night away, swapping tales about the most curious shade of pink for their next powdered coat, they often neglected more pressing concerns. Imagine a world where one moment you're delighting in the charm and elegance of all things fashionable, only to find your well-groomed self writhing in agony later that evening, propelled by a searing rash or the poisons from your luxurious surroundings. As you climb higher on a fashionable peak, the price of beauty leaves the punchline feeling even worse than a very bad joke. The ultimate climax of fashion folly arrives when one realises their dapper appearance was merely a mask hiding their imminent demise. And the irony, all this for a dance, a rumour, or a proper seat at the social table. Onlookers might lift their glasses to toast the style icons of the era, completely oblivious to the risk of impending illness hiding behind those powdered wigs and cravats. And let's not forget the ever-present fear of superstitions, those dastardly threats of misjudged beauty, clad in curses as toxic as the cosmetics used to achieve them. Rather than simply complimenting their elegance or reflecting on their talent, we should raise a glass to the truly dangerous world of fashion, because if there's one thing history teaches us, style may kill, but it has never lost its sense of humour. And so the Georgian dandy dances into infamy, a juxtapositional marvel of elegance and folly, burning bright until fashions inevitably shift, and your carefully curated appearances lead you to an equally carefully scripted end. Modern women complain about uncomfortable bras, but try cramming into a corset meant to shape you like a mannequin. You're doubling down on discomfort, suffocated under layers of fabric and structures designed solely for impossible silhouettes. Corsetry went from fashion to a daily trial. Who thought, hey, let's go for the constricted look, was a reasonable suggestion. The moment you don those layers of hardship, you're playing a game of Russian roulette with your lungs, forced into an awkward dance with an invisible foe. Each breath becomes shallow, each twisted turn an exercise in modern art. It's less about self-expression and more about self-imposed extravagance. As you shimmy into your corset, you can't help but wonder how many women before you collapsed in the name of fashion. It's almost like stepping into a medieval torture device, masquerading as a wardrobe staple. There's a chain of women who wore them before you, each probably swearing a silent oath never to repeat this sacrifice. The only thing inspiring more dread than the morning ritual of lacing yourself into one is the fear of an inevitable wardrobe malfunction. Heaven forbid one too many turns on the lace results in an explosive release akin to a deflated bouncy castle, instantaneously transforming you from belle of the ball to the tragic punchline. But let's not forget the origins of this contraption. The corset was not merely a tool of aesthetic manipulation, it was a cultural phenomenon. In an age when the hourglass figure became the gold standard of beauty, a woman's worth was often measured by the size of her waist. The narrower, the better. It was like walking around with a badge of honour that also happened to double as a fetter. Each time you'd see a lord eyeing you with admiration, there'd be a corresponding urge to thank your trusty corset for giving your body a 40-60 ratio of enticing curves. Then you'd feel the inevitable squeeze and remember, beauty comes with a price heavier than your friend's gluten-free cake. And what about the materials? Oh, the sheer glories of whalebone and steel, all in a bid to ensure your body stays in the correct predestined shape. What a lovely assortment to wrap around your torso, ensuring a high risk of hyperventilation while trying to impress that one nobleman with a questionable taste in fragrance. The whalebone flexed and twisted in all the right places, game on until it decided to poke through and become an impromptu torture device of threats. Imagine attending a lavish ball, the air thick with the smell of fresh blooms and the faint whiff of that lovely arsenic-laced perfume mingling with the scent of unwashed wigs. You're caught in a twirl, your corset clamping down with each rotation, while a crowd of estimably elegant suckers revel in the charms of their constriction. Need to excuse yourself to the restroom? Good luck. You'll be fidgeting with a layer of underpinnings like a magician trying to untie themselves from a straight jacket, all the while hoping the toilet paper isn't a vintage sewing pattern from last year. And let's not forget the social implications. Being tight-laced meant more than having a snug-fitting garment. It often hinted at a woman's moral standing, with socialites expected to behave as delicately as their garments. The subtle art of corsetry insinuated elegance, right up until you overheard an absolute rogue suggest they might prefer fish bone over lace. How delightfully scandalous. Only the brave were bold enough to venture into the realm of twisted farce, where being a fashionable lady came at the risk of not just gasping for breath, but of becoming a national scandal if you were to dare loosen your laces in public. The ridiculousness reaches a peak when you recall the lengths to which women would go to attain the ideal waist. Opulent beauty rituals often clashed with the stark reality of physiological distress. Women would faint regularly, a common side effect dubbed the corset collapse. Nothing quite like an overheated, oxygen-deprived dinner guest cascading to the floor while holding gracefully onto her silk-stuffed plate. And when that velvet-lined collapse occurs, you can practically hear everyone whispering about their unfortunate fate. Ah, another victim of the waistline wars. In today's world, at least, women emerge free of these toxic binders. Yet, the legacy of the corset lives on in the whisper echoes of ridicule, shrouded in fabric and bone, offering the perfect lesson. Never sacrifice your health for the sake of beauty. Unless you want to end the evening literally doing the drop-dead gorgeous. Such are the trials of Georgian beauty, painfully hilarious yet strangely poignant, as you tread through the remnants of a world that valued appearances above all else, one corset at a time. Would you happily smear a concoction of vermilion and white lead on your face to achieve that porcelain glow? Well, in the Georgian era, the answer was a resounding yes. And while you fondly remember slathering on your modern moisturiser, people back then were saying, beauty is pain, while competing in a literal war against facial disfigurement. The pursuit of that flawless complexion drove society to dizzying extremes, where vanity and a total disregard for health went hand in hand, comedically battling it out like a couple of quarrelling siblings at a family reunion. At the centre of this chaos was the infamous lead-based foundation, a yellowish-white paste that had more in common with varnish than actual skin care. Imagine applying a layer of paint more suited for your garden fence than your face. It was as if the upper crust collectively decided their facial canvas should resemble the vintage interiors of their lavish homes. The irony. While Georgians sought to mask their imperfections, they were often left with permanent damage and unsightly rashes that looked suspiciously like leprosy. You think a little acne cream is risky. Try washing your face with toxic sludge and a smattering of dread. But wait, there's more. To get that rosy, cherubic cheek, ladies resorted to pinch cheeks hard enough to invoke a family fight or reach for pigments derived from crushed beetles. Yes, beetles, as well as other potentially toxic plants. Picture it. A gathering of noble women sitting around a drawing room table, eagerly clumping together their homemade blush from beetle guts, while regaling one another with tales of beauty trials gone wrong. Oh darling, I once mistook chalk for face powder, and now I'm a human snowman. The laughs would echo around the parlour, mischief lurking beneath layers of camouflage. And speaking of parlour humour, do you ever wonder how they handled skin distress? Constantly applying creams and paints may sound like a gateway to beauty, but every lady needed a backup plan. Enter the remedy of choice. Rose water. When layers upon layers of makeup suffocated you, rose water was considered to be so refreshing it could practically revive the dead. Bathing your face with it became a ritual of panicked elegance. It was like getting your skin's version of a ticking time bomb reset each day. Alas, who knew you were just one step away from eczema every time you reached for the rose petals? As if things couldn't get any more convoluted, let's not forget the wigs. Oh, those extravagant wigs, steeped in either glorious silk or sheer chaos. Female beauty often relied on wigs piled higher than the average Georgian roof. With their skyscraper-like stature, women practically wore a city on their heads, complete with dashing accessories that had their own names. They'd stuff, spray and set those wigs until they resembled something like a cotton candy disaster caught in a windstorm, and they did this with the understanding that any misstep could mean it would spiral uncontrollably into oblivion and take your dignity with it. And what fueled this frenzy? Cafe society and the social scene, of course. Rubbing elbows with the aristocrats meant a dazzling repertoire of looks that would court both envy and vigilant whispers. Stylized makeup wasn't just about individual expression, it transformed social standing. If your cheeks weren't blushing brighter than a ripe peach, God help you. So whether wearing a literal powder keg of toxic makeup was a risk worth taking or not, the ladies wore it proudly because they were warriors on the battlefield of beauty, armed with lead like a knight's shield, and maybe just as foolish. However, the dark side of these beauty secrets would inevitably surface, and so would the leads they relied on. Perhaps a few too many puffs of rouge would start crafting more than a dashing reputation. So, listen closely. Historical makeup enthusiasts didn't just risk their skin, they risked their lives. And all the while, history chuckled softly beneath layers of irony, hinting that sometimes beauty really doesn't come at a price, it just costs your sanity. So next time you pop on your foundation or spritz on your favourite perfume, just remember, yes, your modern beauty routine is much kinder to your health, but once upon a time, an army of Georgians braved lead, beetles and scandalous wigs to fool the world into believing they were living porcelain dolls. It's a laugh, really. A bit twisted, maybe. But in their pursuit of beauty, they've left an indelible mark, literally. Have you ever ordered a smoothie and secretly wished it was more like cosmetic sludge? That's because you're now entering the world of Georgian apology formulas, where cosmetics were less about hydration and more about hastening your journey to meet the maker. Ingredients read like a medieval banquet gone wrong. Walnut oil, beeswax, and a dash of regret. Oh, joy! The Georgian beauty scene was a veritable mishmash of alchemy and artistry, with concoctions that would make modern DIY enthusiasts recoil in horror. Imagine a bustling apothecary where a well-dressed gentleman is mixing up questionable potions behind the counter, enthusiastically shouting, "You look ghastly. Try this delightful paste made from crushed bat wings and cow bile." With a thin veneer of charm, he promises it'll give you a radiant glow, without mentioning that side effects might include mild contraction of limbs, or possible hallucinations of either pleasant or unpleasant nature. All presentations are held under the guise of enhancing one's beauty, while the only true beauty lies in not being mistaken for an extra in a horror film. And let's chat about the various creams and powders that came packed with miraculous ingredients. You could find potions spiced with everything from ground pearls to dried snake skin. Yes, you heard right. What could be better than slathering yourself in the remnants of a reptile? It's a recipe for standing out at social functions, and not in a good way. The real kicker? Most of these so-called beauty boosters contain substances proven to be more harmful than beneficial. For many an aristocratic woman, vanity was fueling the flames of ignorance, literally. Once those skin treatments caught fire, so did any chance of remaining socially relevant. The men of the era were similarly not to be left out of the equation. Picture them meticulously crafting their own grooming kits, complete with pomade made from dubious animal fats. Because why not dabble in a bit of cruelty for the sake of a well-coiffed mane? They believed that true nobility could be encapsulated in the most elaborate shine and frosting of hair, resulting in a head that looked positively blasted with toxic glitter. Sure, perhaps they stood grandly amid society, but they were also sporting enough mystery odours that one might say, why, did you just wrestle a goat or attempt to stroll through a rose garden after a rainstorm? As word spread about these fabulous concoctions, there was bound to be a black market for look the part and don't ask what's inside beauty concoctions. Did you ever wonder how the standard "how do I look" went hand in hand with "I hope my makeup doesn't kill me after dinner"? Well, reputation among peers was a game of chief importance, so even if your face got gobbled up by a swarm of insects after one too many applications of damp beetle extract, you simply had to smile through the discomfort. Who cared about your ultimate demise when you were regarded as a trendsetter among your peers? These beauty trades were nothing short of chaotic ceremonies leading to questionable post-cosmetic brunch discussions. If one survived the application ordeal, that is. You might have found yourself perched on a baroque chair between doses of contouring charcoal and a certain apprehension around tarts filled with who knows what. The question was never, did I just eat half my weight in lead? But rather, am I still the prettiest lady at the table after 17 applications of all the wrong dosages? Bless their hearts, they were caught in a cycle of suffering, fueled by expectations surrounding beauty. All this madness begs another question. Could history have written a different narrative if someone had simply suggested using soap? How would things have unfolded if, at the edge of every banquet, someone had shouted, "A little lavender soap is all you need"? Alas, the true joke is that these cosmetic catastrophes came with fine fashions and jovial beverages that went down much easier than the consequences that might follow. In a world where looking good often meant risking one's life, let's raise a goblet filled with something far more palatable, perhaps a simple glass of water, or a lovely herbal tea, in gratitude for our modern-day beauty items that don't threaten our vital organs. May your evening be adorned with the knowledge that what once was a true gamble with your face is now simply a walk to the makeup aisle, sans any bat wings. So, you're slapping on a face that could double as a fresh canvas for a painter, except it's made of white lead. This marvel of modernity, as they saw it, somehow lacked the inherent danger signs that told anyone one sniff would be a gas mask requirement. What's more, it usually doubled as decor for your royalty-aspired guests. Imagine hosting a lavish soiree where your elegant guests arrive decked out in gowns that may have required an extra layer of lead. It's a feast for the eyes until someone in a fit of coughs and snickers recalls that even the neighbour's cats died the last time you flung this stuff around. White lead, or ceruse, as it was affectionately dubbed, was the glittering star of the beauty scene in the Georgian era. Dropped straight from the heavens, or perhaps from the bottom of a toxic waste dumpster, it was applied with the finesse of a seasoned artist's brush, creating that desired alabaster complexion that screamed, "I'm so highborn, I shun fresh air." They didn't realise that as they were mastering their courtly charms, they were also signing up for the unforeseen consequences of lead poisoning. Sure, you could impress your husband with your snowy visage, but it was absolutely fantastic when he later called the doctor to examine the twitching left eyebrow you developed. "You look so radiant, darling, but why do you resemble a marionette with a mind of its own?" Of course, the pursuit of that flawless face didn't stop with just foundation. Remember that preparation required for social gatherings. It involved elaborate rituals that could rival a Broadway show. After slathering on ceruse, you'd also need a sprinkle of rouge to add a touch of life to your cheeks, without actually using blood, of course. That meant nothing less than an infusion of toxic vermilion or cochineal, which was made from crushed insects. That's right, you'd be layering a collection of dead bugs on your cheeks and calling it beauty. Just imagine the dinner conversations. "Darling, is that a new shade of rouge? You're positively shimmering like a mushed beetle." Oh, and when it came to removing this melange of doom, most nobles opted out of the such trivialities we cherish today. Why bother rinsing off all that lead like those casual modern folks? Instead, a strategic layer of grease became your trusty ally. Think of it as take it off the easy way, while your skin lamented its own sluggish demise under layers of toxic goo, battling the constant battle against both pollution and sanity. As the parties became more extravagant, the cosmetic trends began eyeing that one little detail: brighter shades. Watch out, because you'd need to start adding a sprinkle of arsenic into the mix for that extra glow. Yes, arsenic. The cereal brand of murderers. Beauty as pain, more like beauty as a potential death sentence. But hey, at least it was an eye-catcher. Meanwhile, your family heirloom portrait would depict you looking dashing and vibrant and perhaps even a little green around the gills, thanks to that delightful lead-based palette. How did the noble women survive these years of toxic beauty? Prayer, perhaps? or steely resolve mixed with an unwillingness to give up societal status? Maybe both. While invoked on porcelain frames, they died off stage with a charming tremor, a quietly flourishing hobby known as Elysian tranquilizer. After all, who needed modern medicine when your biggest health concern was rolling deeper in the social game? Yet let's not forget that in time, some brave souls began questioning this gruesome beauty ballet. It was a rare and gentle rebellion that whispered through upper-class gardens, where a lady might turn to her friend and muse, "Darling, have you ever thought that perhaps smearing poison on our faces might not be the best idea?" With breathless exclamations, they would clink their glasses, perhaps a little too raucously. Next thing you know, they'll start telling us to buy their hardcover self-help books. No thanks. Ultimately, the fallout from the great white lead craze served as a peculiar lesson about sacrifice for style. A pastel palette that, if history were a dramatic play, would be marked not only by the enchanted beauty of its participants, but accompanied with the echoes of sneezes and faint gasps. The irony isn't lost on us now. They sought beauty, they discovered calamity, and wore it with pride. So here's a toast to the Georgian women, to their painful choices and questionable decisions that paved the way for a more aesthetically pleasing future. And cheers to you too, modern-day friends, for embracing makeup sans lead. Next time you dab a little foundation, remember it's your choice to look fabulous without courting a toxic fate. Nothing can compete with the liberation of a flawless complexion, achieved through modern safety and good sense. As you smile in reflection, let those colourful vibes remind you of the past. Just don't forget how the beauty game can serve a double edge. Bodices puffed and padded to moon-worthy proportions turned stomachs sour. Imagine the anxiety of knowing those shapes came from the same places that held the promise of putting you in a formative crumple. Ah, yes, nothing like a well-placed heart-shaped bodice to prevent a full breath or a full call to your maker. You find yourself navigating the disastrous corsetry of Georgian fashion, where the latest style involves constricting your midsection so drastically that you can only top off your evening with a few dainty sips of air and perhaps a pinch of regret. Donning a corset was basically signing a life and death waiver with your own ribcage. You might as well have drafted an apology letter to your lungs. The entire point was to achieve that coveted hourglass figure, which apparently required the use of a medieval torture device, disguised in satin and lace. But who needed functional organs when your true goal was to tilt your waist and call it a day? Every time you took a step, you could hear your innards protesting in unison. "Excuse me, could we have some breathing room?" Good luck with that. You were committed to the cause, and your cause was fashion. The artwork of the time would depict these stunning silhouettes, ladies deftly balancing their new proportions, all while trying to hold a conversation without gasping like a fish out of water. It was a game of high-stakes beauty. One wrong move, or, heaven forbid, a sneeze, could send you tumbling into the danger zone of the wardrobe malfunctions. Do you know what the most dreaded phrase at a Georgian ball was? "I think you're coming apart at the seams." The greatest irony, those extravagant gowns were considered symbols of wealth, while simultaneously doubling as the latest health hazard. Now, let's talk about how these bodices were constructed. I hope you're sitting down, because what they use may shock you. Whalebone, steel, and sometimes the occasional bit of scrap from whatever animal happenstance befell the royal butcher. The idea was to shove everything up, out, and together to achieve that sculpted front. "What's that lovely crinoline you've got there?" You might hear a socialite remark over drinks. Who needs a conversation about their personality when you can just discuss the support structure that lies beneath their ornate gown? More often than not, you'd hear whispers behind fans as ladies clutched them closer, wondering if that corset is really worth their imminent demise. They pondered the real questions of the era. What's the point of looking stunning if you can't even breathe or enjoy a morsel of dinner? A bit of heady irony adorned each ball, and those lovely ladies certainly didn't wear these fashionable horror shows only for show. Dance was a huge part of social life, and can you just imagine attempting a jig in a bodice that could reduce your lung capacity to those of a singing canary? Mustering the courage to waltz required an extra layer of fortitude. You shift nervously, praying you make it through that country dance without fainting or worse, seizing the spotlight by unceremoniously collapsing. As the evening progressed, the weight of their decision became increasingly clear. With every dip of the waist and flourish of the skirt, women across ballrooms found themselves questioning the very essence of femininity past, "Do I look good?" You start to analyse deeper. Is this truly beauty? Shouldn't beauty be a reflection of one's comfort and vitality, rather than being shackled tight? Courage came in the form of a well-timed secret. Many women had stratagems perfected down to an art form. Looser skirts could allow for sneaky slips, a hidden layer of soft fabric here or there to provide relief between dances. The subtext of fashion spoke volumes. Your bosom may be buoyant, but your sanity, that needed its own support system. Ultimately, these beauty practices reveal a wicked cycle of desire, fear, and utter madness, all for the sake of impressing others, risking illness, or worse, the dreaded critiques of society's standards. And as if this isn't quite heavy enough, behind every gorgeous woman was a corset maker who probably thumbed his nose at the world every time he laced up a bodice, tight enough to make a person question their life's choices. So as you take a moment to appreciate today's breathable fabrics and loose-fitting shirts, remember your ancestors who were quite literally suffocating their way to beauty, because the pursuit of elegance beat out comfort every single time. Here's to corsets, the real MVPs of Georgian fashion. Beauty and deception were two sides of the same coin. You were free to fend off suspicion with the flourish of a silk cape over intriguing mannequins. Villains wore the imagery of rosy cheeks, the truth hidden behind theatrical masks. The only trouble, sometimes those masks were their own undoing, pulled at the worst moments. Imagine navigating through a Georgian soiree, your face a toxic canvas of artificial beauty, where secrets simmered beneath layers of lead paint and beetle juice, and all the while your nemesis danced a few steps away, pretending she didn't just dip her brush in a cup full of arsenic. As you swirl through the crowd, your heart races with the thrill of social niceties, while your skin prickles uncomfortably in a steely embrace of corsetry. You marvel at the women around you, their skin rendered impossibly smooth and pale, resembling porcelain dolls more than breathing human beings. What is the price of beauty, you wonder? When one's visage is built upon layers of toxic whimsy and questionable choices, that price becomes far twofold. And while you daintily sip on a glass that might contain either a delightful vintage or some undetectable poison, you realise you're all in this toxic charade together. Now, let's explore these theatrical masks a bit deeper. The 18th century was knee-deep in a landscape where makeup wasn't merely a choice, it was a battle armour, your first line of defence in a world of rumour and class judgment. No one was free from the need to hide behind a fabricated facade, polished to perfection with enough poisonous ingredients to dismay modern makeup artists. Not only did a heavy face of white lead prevent any hint of blemish, but it also ensured you left a trail of horror in your wake, the stench of paranoia finding you long before your stunning entrance. Ah, but why do this, you might ask, horrified at the thought of applying even a smidgen of such concoctions? The answer is hauntingly simple. In Georgian society, beauty signified status, and status was everything. Few dared venture into the social circles unkempt and barefaced, knowing full well they would be viewed with the same judgment reserved for peasant stock. And so, women diligently embraced the deformities of their skin through layers of powder. To many, those artificial musks were both beauty and deceit, creating a realm of aspirational living where everyone chased after an unattainable ideal. Consider the rising dandyism, where men too wore their masks, not just in the form of flamboyant wigs embellished with flourishes of colour and style, but also with their personas. A dandy was more than a fashionista. He was a connoisseur of deception, carefully curating his appearance as meticulously as the scuttled fashionistas surrounding him. Sometimes he was just as burdened by the weight of expectation. Clutch those frilly cuffs and hope that no one notices as your cheeks flush from the mounting pressure of keeping up. Appearances. Fascinatingly, when the Georgian era prided itself on living out loud while holding secrets close to the heart, one could argue it was both a passionate and tragically comedic existence. "Join me," a spirited socialite would exclaim, beckoning you into a snug parlour amidst thickets of powdered faces, all whispering about the latest scandals involving those who dared to be real. Between gasps of horror over an unfortunate accident involving a wig and an errant candle, they presented laughter as a cover for the darkness lurking just beneath the surface. Yet the great irony was that while these beautiful masks offered everyone a chance to mask their flaws and dive head first into mischief, they often ended in personal disaster. A faulty application might transform your perfectly curated evening into a comedy of errors, where half the party looks like something out of a grotesque carnival. "Look there," someone might shout in mirth. "Lady Martha is melting." And while you attempt to suppress a chuckle, you can't help but feel grateful that your own carefully crafted facade still holds. Through all this chaos, one profound truth emerges. The pursuit of beauty can be both enchanting and utterly ridiculous. With each masquerade, with every layer of toxic paint or exquisite fabric gracing one's frame, people spin tales far more intricate than the dresses or wigs they wear. And as the night draws to a close and the masks are peeled back in the realm of home and mirror light, our Georgian counterparts find themselves caught between the reality of who they are and the dazzling create themselves of who they want to be labyrinth, a battleground exquisitely painted in hues of deception. So here's to the Georgian era, where beauty was a double-edged sword, its very face laden with peril. A memory that invites you to look gently, with humour and deep appreciation, at the grotesque dance of aspiration, fashion, and the wild truths that lay hidden beneath layers of farce. In the end, perhaps it's a comforting reminder that the pursuit of beauty has always been a complex affair, fraught with snares worth dodging, especially if they involve lead and crushed beetles. No Georgian beauty story is complete without some horrible beauty elixir that promised miracles, but ended like a bad cringe comedy. If the elixir didn't kill you, the outrageous claims might. Will it get rid of my wrinkles? Why, yes, because it's a delightful mix of don't do it and a complete absence of logic. Imagine gathering for tea time only to realise your fancy beverage is an unholy amalgam of lead, mercury, and a dash of desperation. Perhaps a hint of hope lingers at the bottom of that teacup. Good luck retrieving it. And if someone cheerfully comments about your glow, it's probably the faint shimmer of arsenic doing its toxic dance beneath your skin. Take the infamous elixir of life, touted by more than a few dubious alchemists who claim to distill youth from a mysterious bubbling cauldron. This miracle potion combined ingredients like crushed pearls and snake oil, literally, into a cocktail that didn't so much enhance your complexion as it conducted an orchestra of chaos within your body. the notion was all allure and not a hint of proven science. Instead, you might find yourself not refreshing your face, but desperately refreshing your life insurance policy. And let's not forget the herbal remedies that flourished in Georgian society, oftentimes teetering more towards cruelty than cure. Imagine drinking foul concoctions made of foxglove, green coriander, and a sprinkle of, well, something likely poisonous. Did they think a touch of danger enhances flavour or what? If a recipe called for just an innocent pinch of rue, perhaps to keep your wrinkles at bay, what they didn't tell you was that rue is most effective when used in minuscule amounts. You could easily find yourself causing your own complexion to develop a very different kind of youthful glow, courtesy of rapid heart palpitations or outright paranoia about the last spider that just happened to crawl over your laundry that one time. You might be wondering what drove the Georgian elite to toss common sense out the window while floating on euphoric waves to beauty's shores. It turns out ladies of the time were often swayed by their peers. Catching on to the latest miraculous elixirs was a fabulous way to elevate your social standing. Have you tried the essence of batwing, your neighbour might whisper conspiratorially over tea? Equipped with the voice of an enthusiastic snake oil salesman, these beauty connoisseurs could convince even the most sceptical that drinking a potion brewed with natural ingredients, natural as in we found this in Grandma's attic, would leave them looking fresh-faced and full of vigour. And in a world where competition for beauty was fiercer than any Olympic showdown, women clamoured to sip these toxic brews while their nurses eyed them with sheer horror. Not only did they gallantly endure a host of ailments, but they left a wake of chaotic exaggeration behind, them more emotional than a soap opera after every single sip. Because once you set out on the beauty path with an elixir of life, there's no turning back. Few dared to admit that the mirage of youthful skin was more of a fever dream than a reality. Now, let's consider some well-meaning Fright Fest qualifications. There were the splendid cosmetic ales, created to quench thirst and spoil any semblance of self-respect. You might sip a few pints of ale intended to lighten your skin while reinforcing the deep-rooted belief that party meant party with lead in your drink. As you giggled your way through cotton candies of excess, you got the sense you were not only having a good time, you were doing it with a pinch of regret and a stellar hangover waiting for you in the morning light. And before you think these elixirs were strictly for women, even men had their fair share of dubious products. The refined gentleman would often partake, waving caution as he consumed tonics claiming to enhance masculinity. Alas, what he received instead was a blend of regret and a sudden realization that his cheeks glowed a fantastic shade of crimson. Beauty was a universal battlefield, and there were no escape routes available. So the next time you pick up your favourite beauty serum or gulp down that trendy smoothie, take a moment to appreciate the relatively hazard-free victories of today's cosmetic world. The only thing we risk now is accidentally matching our foundation with the colour of our favourite wine, not plunging into a delightful dinner with murky potions. Remember, our ancestors might have embraced going out with a bang, but when it came to beauty, indulging in a little self-care might just be the best elixir of all. Are mascara bombs just an exaggeration? Maybe, until you realise that Elizabethan eye paint helped pry those lashes open wide. Just not in the way you might have hoped. Lace and bells rattle as you contemplate whether your beauty helps or hinders your chances at living past 30. Enter the Georgian era, where the quest for alluring eyes often meant risking life and limb, literally. Imagine a society where eyeshadow was made from ground minerals, crushed beetles, and more than a dash of curiosity about just how much toxicity one could bear before calling it quits. Your daily makeup ritual starts with a trusted friend gathering exotic ingredients. Are they trusted? Well, In a world where you could barter a life for a pretty smile, perhaps they are. In the corner of the workshop, a curious collection of ingredients rustles. Lapis lazuli ground into powder for that perfect blue hue, lead oxide for a dazzling white base if you're feeling melancholic, and, oh look, some classic vermilion for when you really want to emphasise that I'm dying here look. You mix and match, layer upon layer, with a kind of precision comparable to a sniper preparing for battle. Just a dab will do it, you mutter while holding a tiny brush, determined to achieve those coveted doll eyes. As you apply, thoughts straddle across the wildly dangerous idea that, just perhaps, you might be inviting several toxins into your orbit. Whatever helps you fit in with the crowd, right? With one sweeping stroke of clay. But not just any clay, it's princely clay, sourced from the noble region, you assure yourself. Your self-assurance is lit with a flickering candle in this shadowy realm of cosmetics. Who said beauty was easy? Now picture heading off to a lavish soiree, where giggles and flutters echo through the hallowed halls. Guests adorned with magnificent wigs and dresses lined with ribbons parade around while casting laggard glances at the unfortunate souls who dared to appear barefaced. "Oh, darling, did you forget your mascara?" they cry, clutching their hearts with mock disbelief. Pardon me, sweetheart, but would you care to mention that you nearly fell victim to a cosmetic apocalypse at last week's gala?" As the tension builds, your eyes glitter, not from twinkling delight, but from the sheer weight of eye paint layered upon eye paint. With newfound hope, you strive to dazzle against a backdrop of concern, fighting the overwhelming urge to scratch those horrible lacy contraptions intended to please. With every flutter of your lashes, you begin to contemplate whether those eye-widening marvels delivered on their promise or simply led you astray. But wait, makeup lore soon becomes your ultimate downfall. One smudge, one overzealous moment of expression, and you've gained a reputation. Look at her. Isn't that... what? A raccoon with a flair for excess? The demise of your illustrious social standing manifests with each blink. The irony hanging thicker than the paint on your lashes. Ever had skincare comparable to paint stripping? You discover the horrors of infection, irritation, and allergic reactions, the likes of which made medieval endings look peaceful. Does the price of beauty truly hinge on dodging another tedious makeup mishap? Flashbacks of excruciating visits to the local apothecary stride through your mind. Oh dear, it seems that eye paint might have ruptured both your sanity and aesthetics, they muse, shaking their heads with tisk pity as you bury your fears in another fundamental layer of pancake makeup. Ironically, while you fight for privilege through fashion, you remain starkly aware of the only thing missing from your visage, a smooth, blemish-free existence. Time pushes on, and the relentless pursuit of beauty remains paramount. With each bloody revolution of fashion blaring out new trends, you remind yourself of those that came before. Surely no one suffered quite like the Elizabethans. Was it ever truly worth it? As evening's makeup doth fade, perhaps you ought to reserve those eyelash bombshells for someone else, like your mother-in-law, you know, just to keep the good spirits in check. In the end, your quest for dramatic eyes teeters on the edge between allure and lunacy. "Let us toast," you declare, raising your glass, "to the shadows upon our sight." You down the rest of your drink as you ponder the complexities of life. Should we gamble our future for a glimmerous blink? The crowd bursts into laughter, unaware of the truth written behind your eyelids, and you're left to decide whether the most dangerous makeup of all was the illusion of beauty itself. The world of medicines masquerading under the banner of beauty, balms and lotions promising to cure ailments halfway through applying them with a wink and a giggle. Lice repellents, also great for cracked skin. Welcome to life in Georgian England, where the classics involved more than just a painter's brush at work. In this whimsical realm, beauty consultants were part beauticians, part pharmacists, and part alchemists. You might walk into a shop seeking a little blush, and they might hand you a small pot of something with an inkling of arsenic in it, guaranteed to make your cheeks rosy, or send you straight to the grave. Imagine this scene. You stroll into a beauty emporium, where shelves are teeming with jars labelled with enticing names like Elixir of Eternal Youth and Venomous Anti-Aging Serum. It all sounds charming until you realise that one of these concoctions might actually be a blend of snake venom and crushed beetles. Who wouldn't want a little venom in their life? Just think of it as nature's way of giving you that "I'm dangerously beautiful" look. As you peruse, an enthusiastic saleswoman pitches a concoction, claiming to exfoliate your skin while at the same time giving you a fully fledged fever. Nothing says glow like a little delirium, she chirps, and you find yourself nodding along, entranced by the notion that beautiful skin might come at the cost of just a fever dream or two. Lice, the eternal nemesis of the well-coiffed, found themselves on the losing end of the Georgian beauty arsenal. Why bother with combs when you could simply smear some ghastly-smelling salve that promised to repel these pesky intruders? The best part? It doubled as a moisturiser for those cracks and fissures appearing on your skin, which you might have inherited from that latest worm-infested wig. Just think, while you're labouring under the weight of a wig that could house an entire bird family, you could also be smearing its detriments onto your face. What a time saver! And let's not overlook the miracle creams that weren't so much creams as they were delightful poultices. You'd apply something labelled Iron Tonic for lush locks, which predominantly consisted of rusty water mixed with plant extracts that, by some miraculous form of marketing, were believed to promote hair growth. Bald, they claimed, not with this miracle mix. Yet, upon further examination, those who dared to indulge often found themselves with hair resembling hedgehogs, knotted, wild, and just as likely to frighten small children on the street. But the Georgian obsession didn't stop there. Lest you think they limited their health audacity merely to beauty products, let's talk about the mad intersection of medicine and makeup. The medicinal herbs simmering in a cauldron had morphed into a beauty staple. Take 2 of these tinctures for pain, and they'll keep your skin looking youthful. Alas, the youthfulness tended to dissolve with every sip, and by the end of the month you might have ended up aging 1 decade for every bottle consumed. For those wanting results even quicker, some beauty centres would offer a make-your-own experience. Nothing screams expert like a room full of hopeful women trying to concoct their own foundation made of lead and crushed various herbs, which of course turned into poetry in motion as they gestured wildly over bubbling pots, perhaps unintentionally invoking a witchcrafty vibe to their skincare routine. "Just a pinch of this and a sprinkle of that," they murmured, while all you could think was, "Great, I'm going to end up like a turnip sprouting at the wrong end of a vegetable patch." Let's not forget the infamous humour ochres, concoctions that purportedly balanced the 4 humours, which were believed to govern our health. Not clearing your skin with a brilliant balm. Not to worry, just a dab of these ochres will sort you right out. The only humour that seemed prevalent, however, was the idea that rolling the dice with these remedies somehow qualified as reasonable health advice. Perhaps it was way less about radiant skin, and way more about the dubious thrill of chancing the quality of the next meal on your skincare routine. In the end, the true legacy of Georgian beauty products was more about survival than glamour. Sure, you could emerge from the experience of applying these concoctions looking like a porcelain doll, but you might also end up with a series of ailments that left you feeling like a real-life ghost. After all, in Georgian England, beauty was often bundled with a side of danger, and who wouldn't appreciate the thrill of looking fabulous while dancing with the spectre of questionable health decisions? So, as we laugh at these beauty practices today, thankfully from the safety of our moisturizers free of lead, beetles and snakebite toxicity, let's take a moment to appreciate our modern offerings. Because while history might have survived on poisons, at least we know the difference between a cotton ball and a potential disaster. Let's raise a toast to both our ancestors for surviving it all, and to ourselves for saying no to beauty when it invites calamity. Let's spice it up. Nobles flaunted their carefully curated beauty mixed with costly ingredients, while commoners settled for whatever didn't kill them. A silhouette of nuanced hierarchy unfolds here. A dash of luxurious fragrances snobbishly flaunted in aristocratic circles, while impoverished households chased after mere survival. Imagine, if you will, a noble lady, elegantly draped in silk and lace, emerging from her lavishly decorated drawing room. The scent of her perfume drifts through the air, a blend of rare flowers and musky spices that cost more than a peasant family's yearly wage. Meanwhile, just a few streets over, a commoner scrubs her face with a handful of creek mud, praying the effort softens her coarse features just enough to charm the local butcher. Now, let's talk ingredients. Nobles had access to everything from imported jasmine oil to crushed rose petals, meticulously blended into potions designed to tantalize the senses. It's like their beauty rituals came with an exclusive VIP pass to the world's best spa. Ever wonder what it was like to have your face anointed with the fragrance of flowers picked by a virginal maid, but only after the sun rose on a Wednesday? Surely those was the days when you could add living your best life to your resume. Well, until you found the news of the impending rot from the lead-painted cosmetics brought you back to reality. On the other hand, peasants had a far less glamorous relationship with beauty. Instead of costly perfumes, their scents wafted more towards sour bread, damp hay, and whatever livestock they had shared their home with. What's that delightful aroma, you might ask, only to be met with a look that confirms your worst fears. That's last week's stew, dear listener, still good for tomorrow, I assure you. Bathing was less an occasion and more of a philosophical quest. Just like a failed medieval pilgrimage, that elusive hygiene was but a few gallant attempts away, leaving more layers of grime than sparkle. And hygiene, or the lack thereof, was a persistent concern. Nobles might complain about the luxury of their ornate bathtubs, filled with hot, fragrant waters concocted from the petals of elusive orchids, while peasants were forced to make do with whatever patch of river they could find that didn't smell like small animal remains. That's right. When washing became an option for peasants, the ritual looked more like dipping into a muddy puddle while covering your eyes. Hey, hope for the best, right? As the noblewoman prepares to venture to the marketplace, she dons a stunning gown and delicately layers her scents. Fragrance was basically the equivalent of status currency. However, for the peasants, any attempt at personal fragrance meant dousing themselves in animal fat, slightly scented with overripe apples. Eau organic waste, if you will. Who knew saving money could have such memorable scents, both good and bad? Those expensive paints, used to brighten the aristocratic complexion, were saturated with all the toxic ingredients none of us would dare put on our skin today. But hey, when you're a noble, the risk of dying from your beauty treatment is just a small price to pay for maintaining that alabaster skin. Think rich and glamorous, they would tell each other. You only live once, and those are dreadfully wide high heels you're wearing. Contrast that with our commoner, who had the audacity to think a scrub with herbs would magically erase her tired wrinkles after days of back-breaking labour. Tales of beauty, rich and grim. If you were lucky enough to find a sweet spot in the middle, maybe you could spend your days bathing in a herbal ratatouille, halfway between safe and utterly dangerous in the pursuit of cuteness. Those lead toxins. They would merely have to be accepted as part of that society's archetypal diet, a small price to pay for looking fabulous by their standards. So next time you hear someone complain about modern beauty trends, or remember that $50 hair product that claimed to be the answer but left you questioning your budget, just remember, at least you aren't fleetingly tempted by a charcoal-smudged beetle concoction that promised to keep the wrinkles at bay while simultaneously trying to kill you. In the Georgian era, vanity was indeed the mother of all self-destructive beauty efforts, choreographed meticulously for your amusement, or perhaps horror. You'd expect bathing to be a hygiene staple, right? Wrong. Back then, a wash was an invitation to disease, and bathing was reserved for the brave and foolhardy. The idea of cleanliness involved convincing your body, "We're good, we prefer layers of grime." Really? Talk about a lack of joint effort from your historical counterpart. Imagine waking up in a world where the closest thing to a bath was a rain shower that had you dodging water droplets like it was a medieval game of dodgeball. It's no wonder body odour was practically a local perfume, wafting through the streets, leaving a trail more pungent than an unflushed latrine. Let's talk about the so-called bathing scenes in Georgian society. They often included an ornate wooden tub made for show more than use, plumped up outside your lavish mansion, surrounded by an audience of gawking peasants and sticky-fingered urchins. This setup was a real spa day vibe before anyone dared to acknowledge all the grubby realities of everyone's greatly missed hygiene. Now, slipping into the nice strong brew of water was more of a test of bravery than relaxation, especially considering how much you sacrificed just trying to submerge yourself without slipping into an ancient form of unintentional water torture. You'd fill this basin with the remnants of whatever dirty water had already scared off all the birds in the local park, glaring at you from one very unromantic corner of your yard. Now, imagine showing up at a social gathering with the distinct aroma of boiled cabbage and a lingering hint of horse sweat. That was popular company back then. Friends would give you the sort of courteous nods that said, "Ah, yes, it's nice to see you again. Strong scent you have. Really complements your complexion. And remember, washing your face or body with soap wasn't a thing, if you had soap at all. Most people would clean themselves using lye, essentially a harsh substance meant more for scrubbing floors than human skin. In fact, most soap of the period was laced with animal fats and ash, which left patrons feeling less like they were freshened up for a beauty contest and more akin to a walking barbecue. But it was all about that vanity game. They enacted ritualistic scrubbing, each one sincerely convincing themselves they had a shot at the good life, even as they succumbed to medieval grime. Now lest we forget the ongoing comedy of sharing water in communal baths. If you ever thought the pool had weirdly familiar swimmers, you've yet to experience a Georgian bathhouse, where privacy was scarce and judgment was plentiful. Gowned men and women would plop themselves into murky, lukewarm water, coming face to face with a variety of uncommon habits. Think sudden body hair exhibitions and more than one catfight over a spare washcloth. And by the end of each session, bathers clambered out of a tub that could only be described as a cauldron of questionable health choices. Speaking of health, all this bathing, or lack thereof, comes with some significant repercussions. Parasitic infections travelled faster than gossip, and 2 cities later, syphilis had ventured through Victoria's skillful hands, giving makeshift social climbers a new fervour to compare their dermatological challenges. And who could forget about the notorious bathing disease? Yes, dear listener, the sheer wealth of germs earned a fancy title. To bathe was to court disaster. It's like flirting with danger while wearing lead-based face powder. One false move, and you'd be meeting your maker sooner than anticipated. But let's not be too harsh on our Georgian ancestors. Their grimy ways created countless camaraderie rituals. Take a stroll through town and you'll witness spontaneous outbreaks of who smells worse tournaments in the local alehouse. These contests, complete with uproarious laughter and a few rounds of rear nonsense, offered folks a chance to bond through shared misfortune, prolonged aging in their own skin. Don't even get started on how the near-endless supply of body odour led to heightened tolerance toward flatulence. It was a time where smells might just save your life, better than the horror of medieval disposition. So next time you take a refreshing shower, lather with fragrant soaps and soak in a tub hot enough to steam vegetables. Whisper a thank you to your ancestors who had enough sense to embrace indoor plumbing. And remember, while you're wrinkling that nose at the lovely scent of yesterday, humanity forged bonds through every rustic touch. Hopeful that behind each odour buried, we eventually emerged refined after a good scrub. Rejoice, for we have risen from the depths of filth to bless the world with awash days that leave us feeling fresh as daisies instead. Egg yolks freckled with lead like glittering sun rays were a well-accepted foundation scheme. Can you imagine a gallant hen protesting to the historians above, "Y'all did what with our eggs? And since chemicals were par for the course, are you shocked a cocktail of traditions vanished amid all the blunders? Instead of simply cracking an egg into a skillet for breakfast, ladies would crack open the yolk with the intention of smothering their faces in it, hoping for a flawless complexion that was more radiant than the morning sun. It's like saying, I want to look fabulous, but only if it means risking my face for some high-stakes biohazard." Every morning, you'd find yourself reaching for a bowl of egg yolks, wondering if this was the beauty trend that would finally get you invited to the high society tea parties. But the real question looms, is the illusion of beauty worth the risk? As you blended your egg mixture with white lead and a flicker of crushed honeysuckle, you'd pause to ponder whether your breakfast was merely breakfast or the ultimate act of vanity. Is that even a meal anymore? You're not just playing with your meal, you're reconstructing the essence of face masks into a culinary ballet, separating the yolk like a modern-day witch concocting a potion, albeit one that would soon have you casting spells while simultaneously planning for an urgent doctor's visit. Fast forward to the application. There you are, expertly slapping a yellowish concoction across your cheeks like some culinary Picasso. You can hear the gasps around you as others witness this shocking new trend. "Is she using raw egg?" they whisper, half intrigued, half horrified. Yet the trickle-down effect takes hold. Upon application, your face glistens like a beautifully overcooked omelette. Sure, it might capture everyone's attention, but not for the right reasons. If there's one thing everyone seems certain of, it's that the words egg and hazard should have been joined at the hip. Meanwhile, the higher the societal rank, the crazier the beauty rituals got. You can practically hear the nobles giggle conspiratorially about how they outdo one another in this borderline macabre competition of beauty. Tiered cakes and poufs were the extravagant additions of their personalities, because who needs a resume when you have a blood-red lip that could rival a ripe strawberry? Or more truthfully, a symbol of their impending doom. These women were willing to risk it all, madness, mystery, and the sweet kiss of lead, for the coveted porcelain visage. Because what says wealth and refinement more than looking like a living mannequin ready for the guillotine? As you glance in the mirror, the reflection stares back, a face more enigmatic than a riddle wrapped in an unworn corset. You know you're striking gold, or at least are you lured in by the gilded allure of societal standards? As you blend the yolky concoction into every crevice of your skin, you can almost feel your health deteriorating in real time. How did it come to this? It's a wonder just how much you'd put on the line for a smidgen of society's adoration and attention. But fret not, for the egg yolk trend eventually passed, much like the fleeting popularity of powdered wigs. History tells us that the atrociousness didn't end with raw eggs. There was no shortage of creativity in the realm of beauty, often resulting in deadly concoctions superseding a casual summer evening by the creek. Instead of just edible ingredients, the world of harsh chemicals and dubious substances flourished. After all, why settle for egg when you could utilize arsenic-based face washes, a beauty product with a punch that made you rethink your afternoon snack? And let's not forget the logical twist. You'd be expected to eschew these self-destructive tendencies with poise, because what other option do you have when beauty and peril lie side by side? So there you are, layering on products that could be classified as existential threats in any modern-day beauty consultancy, and telling yourself, it's worth it. The ultimate tribute to vanity involves unladylike hope that you might strike gold upon your bedroom mirror, risking your health merely on the fortune of societal pressuring. At the end of the day, as you scrub these toxic remnants from your once glamorous face, you'll rethink your choices while pondering that greatest beauty question: will the world accept nothing less than toxicity itself? Beauty standards may swing like the pendulum in a clock tower, but who could argue it was merely the art of brushing away the half-baked ideals? So raise a glass to those poor folk who did it all in the name of beauty. Cheers to the visionaries who turned vanity into a supremely hazardous affair. Picture yourself for a moment at a Georgian ball, marvelling at the heights of powdered wigs. Now add a rare mishap with an open flame, an alarming reminder that beauty can burn bright, sometimes literally. You try fanning vigorously, except now your wig becomes the star of a dangerous magic act. The scene is lavish. Chandeliers glimmer like stars, and your fellow guests air kiss through layers of silk and satin, while expertly navigating their own towering hairstyles. But alas, the moment you get too close to the candlelit centerpieces, the flickering light takes on a sinister edge. Your carefully constructed coiffure, weighing heavier than your sense of impending doom, instinctively leans towards the warmth, threatening to ignite faster than a Roman candle at a 4th of July party. Now, you have to ask yourself, how did it become acceptable to wear something made from actual horsehair, or worse, human hair, piled atop your head like a circus tent? While you struggle to keep your cool amid your peers' elegant laughter, rest assured that the truth about powdered wigs carries more mischief than glamour. Each wig is a meticulously crafted structure, laden with beauty products so toxic they could probably double as paint for a fence line. Hair pieces were often doused in fragrant powders, both to enhance the look and to mask the less than pleasant odour of unwashed hair underneath. And let's not forget the added danger of getting too close to any flickering candle, as wigs frequently caught aflame, leading ladies to frantically swat at their flaming tresses. Suddenly, the rising star of the evening becomes the evening's main event, and an impromptu foot race to the nearest bucket of water. The etiquette around these wigs was equally absurd. You want to feel fabulous, but also fear being the subject of a court conspiracy after cursing the woman in front of you for standing too close to your crowning glory. The bustling ball can sometimes feel like an awkward dance of dodging, as guests attempt to navigate without accidentally knocking each other's hairpieces off like dominoes on a cheap dining table. It's like a reenactment of a high-stakes game of chess, except the pieces are all wearing wigs and no one is actually winning. Ah, but there's more. Let's discuss the constant upkeep required. Wigs weren't just decorative. They needed attention more than a houseplant with abandonment issues. Regular cleaning was crucial, not with water, mind you, that would probably ruin the entire structure. Instead, they were often cleaned through powdering, and a heavy hand could cloak your head in enough suffocating layers to prompt an annual Dust Bowl warning. You can almost picture a noblewoman standing in front of her mirror, gingerly shaking a tin of powder like a magician unveiling a stage trick, whilst her maid stands nearby clutching her side, rolling her eyes over unearthly hairstyle tensions. With hairstyles resembling something out of a mythical imagination gone wild, It's no wonder that these grandiose looks weren't just an aesthetic choice. They were a status symbol. The higher your wig, the higher your standing, literally and figuratively. Imagine walking into a room with less hoisted volume and style. Before you knew it, your social ranking slumped lower than floor-length hemlines. Yet among all this societal bravado, many nobles wished they could just let it go, if only it weren't for the impossible allure of trend and tradition that bound you tighter than an overcooked spaghetti noodle. Each heightening crinkle of your wig could easily plummet you to the inaudible whispers of, "Did you hear she wore that dress last season?" while one careless flicker meant social death by the chandelier's glow. But they endured it all, sporting their gravity-defying wigs, all in the name of beauty, an unsettling truth that raises eyebrows even in our day. In a strange way, it almost aligns with how today's trends cycle through Instagram, with filters that allow one to appear as if standing atop the latest fashion wave, while still bearing the hidden costs deep behind those glorious posts. So, would you trade air conditioning and hairspray for a powdered wig saved from the flames of social ruin? Who needs modern luxuries when you can have frizzy curls piled high above your head, begging for attention one flicker at a time? In the end, with each bounce from the ballroom floor, you may silently wonder if the fear of catching fire was ever greater than the ambition to climb the social ladder, one badly singed hair at a time. Beauty, it seems, much like history, can be dangerous, slippery, and prone to igniting unexpectedly, leaving laughter, and some unplanned memories, in its wake. Serums that called upon anything but reason for reasons unknown. High society ladies pored over bizarre recipes claiming they warded off evil, giving you goosebumps. While a little soot dusted your eyelids, you noticed that most beauty experts were just fancy hucksters with a flair for the dramatic. In an age when science was just a wild idea tossed around in salon gossip, these concoctions range from the absurd to the downright terrifying. Imagine lovingly crafting a potion meant to bring good luck, and instead accidentally summoning a curse. Whoops, there goes your complexion. Now, let's talk about some of the secret ingredients in these beauty potions, which might leave you scratching your head, or laughing quietly into your pillow. Ingredients like crushed pearl dust were all the rage, believed to bestow radiant skin. Sounds lovely, right? Except for the fact that obtaining those pearls often involved a desperate oyster that had seen better days. Talk about beauty at a cost. Meanwhile, human urine, the urine of young boys, esteemed for its purity, was once considered an elixir for youthful skin. Filtered in the finest way possible, the advertisements might boast, while you silently, frantically calculated the risk of not only skin irritation, but also social standing plummeting faster than a men's wig during a rainstorm. You might appreciate a little snazzy face cream, but the Georgians had their face cloths, which were designed to help improve complexions. These cloths were often worn snugly against the face, trapping in heat and sweat, all while taking on the function of a bacterial petri dish. Who wouldn't want to walk around with a glorified sweat fest, simply to achieve that desired glow? No wonder they experienced such varying results. It must have felt like a biological experiment gone awry. If soap were considered a luxury, then cleanliness meant merely playing hide-and-seek with filth, hoping it would disappear with the next beauty regime. And then there were the rituals surrounding beauty, which often turned into elaborate superstitions. Some ladies would bury beauty products in the moonlight, claiming a lunar kiss would grant them eternal youth. Imagine the chaos of a society gathering to perform ridiculous rituals while dressed to the nines. Such an aesthetic endeavour typically resulted in nothing more than damp mascara from rain or tears. But hey, nothing short of divine intervention could save them now. Chanting the correct incantation, they said, is key. As the rest of us stay in our pyjamas, rebels, bonkers on blood, sweat and, guess what, hand sanitizer. Ever heard of the balm of young maidens? Don't even get me started on that strange concoction made from real renderings of corpse wax and urine. And if that wasn't mind-boggling enough, some of the real beauty gurus began advocating for rituals that focused on animal transformations. According to lore, wearing a dead fox as a shawl would impart its cunning beauty attributes onto you, imparting a confidence that even the boldest of mascara could not achieve. You'd walk into an event channeling the spirit of a long-lost fashionista, while the fox's lingering scent couldn't cause the same enthusiasm as an old gym sock. Yet, the most delightful irony of living in such whimsical times was perhaps the common sighting of every woman's frenemy, the mirror. The glass had become both a saviour and a demon, often reflecting questionable choices. Is that my reflection, or have I conjured a sunburnt banshee? They'd wonder after dousing their faces in coal dust to achieve that natural smoky eye. Mirrors transformed into devices of both confidence and performance, showcasing their survival through the ages, all while ready to reveal dark secrets that were better left hidden. In the end, the pursuit of beauty veiled itself in myths and modish materials that may have sparked a revolution, or just a few bizarre decisions. So here's to the Georgian women, daring enough to dab their skin with strange potions and charm their way into society. They may not have had the best sense of beauty, yet their commitment to crafting stories through absurd but lively rituals ultimately left us a charming legacy we can only laugh about today. As we safely splash on our lotions filled with ingredients we can pronounce, let's take a moment to appreciate that while times have changed, a good dose of humour and zeal remains timeless. That breakneck pace we consider daily living may very well look like a slow dance in comparison to Georgian beauty rituals. Each crumbling vanity mirror practically screams, success was not guaranteed, as you wonder how many sighed into the void of expired concoctions, all amid the relentless pursuit of some ideal. Can you even imagine the strategy meetings the ladies of the court must have held, deep in the candle-lit recesses of their chambers? Shall we go with crushed beetles for the blush, or perhaps venture into lead paint for that porcelain glow? Decisions, decisions. It's enough to make anyone appreciate modern makeup removers that don't double as toxic cleanup crews from a horror movie. Fast forward to 2023, where the quest for beauty has become a little less deadly. Mostly. Sure, we still encounter some questionable trends now and then, like a bizarre green smoothie that promises the skin of a 20-year-old and tastes akin to grass clippings. But let's not kid ourselves. Scrolling through the beauty aisle nowadays doesn't evoke the sense of existential dread that it did for our Georgian sisters. No more wandering wide-eyed through shops drenched in the aroma of musk and mystery, faced with character on every shelf that might make your hair sprout in fear. Now we have neatly organised aisles featuring products whose names sound like they came straight out of a Wizards of Waverly Place episode, Elixir of Eternal Youth, or Miracle Tonic for Radiant Glow, and yet despite the advancements, beauty standards wade through murky waters just as they did centuries ago. Fads still come and go like misplaced wigs blown off during a gust of wind. One minute your Instagram feed is packed with influencers preaching about the wonders of a 10-step skincare regimen. The next it's all streamlined minimalism, the whole I swear I only use water and sunshine movement. Because nothing says natural beauty quite like the illusion of casually achieving perfection with no actual effort, am I right? Let's pause here to appreciate the irony. The women of the past fought, and often failed, to reach compelling standards of beauty laden with danger, while we, millennia later, chase after a flawless aesthetic defined largely through filters, airbrushes, and willingly sponsored realities. Ever looked at a picture of a model holding a glass of skin-enhancing collagen water and thought, "That's it, I need to start chewing on grass"? You're not alone. Modern beauty ads often promise simpler solutions wrapped in eye-catching designs and flashy marketing, even if they've got the depth of a puddle and not an ounce of homologation to reality. And as social media continues to dictate what it means to be beautiful, throw in the cherry on the cake with the prevalence of cosmetic procedures, where Georgian ladies layered on their paints like they were working on an elaborate fresco. Today's counterparts might think nothing of injections, fillers, or even vampire facials. Yes, that's a thing and involves your own blood. Because if you can't trust your blood, whose can you trust? The desperation to hold on to youthful beauty morphs into a game of how far will you go that rivals Georgian fashion's own penchant for excess. Delve deeper and consider how that rapid transformation around hormone treatments, temporary facelifts and a slew of other beauty advancements has made the pursuit of an unblemished visage an oddly political statement. Do you remember when self-care involved a face mask? In today's world, you might just slap on a skin-tightening biomatrix, running the risk of emerging from it as a dewy Picasso. But the question remains, are we really different from our Georgian ancestors who revelled in a concoction of questionable powders? Let's not forget that many of the Georgian products were marketed under the guise of life-enhancing. By contrast, we're charmed into thinking that thousands of dollars worth of treatments will unlock the secrets of infinite youth. With every slather of moisturiser or swipe of lipstick, the struggle remains the same. We seek acceptance, validation, and, well, just a bit of, "You've got this," encouragement from our reflections. So, as you catch a glimpse of yourself in the mirror, squint at the new miracle cream you just bought, and ponder whether you've made the right decision this time, remember our historical predecessors who drained their porcelain dreams into pots of lead and crushed beetles. You may not be rewriting the book on beauty today, but at least like them, you're at least leaving your mark, albeit hopefully with a bit less risk to your overall health. There you have it, a fun mix of vanity, humour, and a little common sense added in. Fashion is fickle, but history teaches us that the pursuit of beauty and the tales behind it will always remain fabulously in vogue. Our final glance brings you full circle to celebrate, or perhaps commiserate, the wondrously outrageous choices people have made in the name of beauty. Lift your glass, unsure of whether to praise those moments or cringe in horror over prevailing practices. May their lessons guide us as we embrace our questionable modern day defined by serums and sprays, sans lead, beetles or flames. You can't make this up. Now that we've explored the whimsical and downright absurd world of Georgian beauty products, let's remember, life was a delicate dance between glamour and poison, much like modern life, but thankfully without the risk of lead-infused lip gloss. You see, the pursuit of beauty in the Georgian era was not just a matter of ambition, it was a high-stakes gamble where the consequences often matched the risks. Imagine stepping into a bustling salon filled with women sporting wigs so colossal they could host tea parties for birds perched atop their heads. These wigs had an unsettling dual purpose. Not only were they the height of high fashion, but they were also a convenient repository for lice and the occasional lost chicken that wandered too close. You thought getting a new hairstyle was nerve-wracking. Try navigating your way through a bustling ball while hoping not to offend a nearby chandelier with your towering curls. The blending of toxic mixtures became a true art in its own right, with women layering on white lead like it was a mineral-rich cake frosted for royalty. Can you fathom the irony in a world where the desire to look graceful and glamorous frequently teetered on the brink of disaster? One moment you're gliding into a gala radiating beauty. The next, you're battling the after effects of mercury-infused mascara that left you blinking stars instead of charming suitors. It's the kind of charm that lays the subtle groundwork for regret. Reminds you of that time your roommate convinced you that detoxing just meant drinking non-potable water during a 2-week cleanse, right? You can't make this up, folks. And speaking of irony, a toast to the beautiful botanical blends paraded as delightful fragrances, because who wouldn't want to spritz themselves with a concoction designed to disguise bad odours while simultaneously threatening their very life? This is a space where florals meet fatalities, where your eau de parfum might just turn into your personal eau de poison. Just picture someone wearing a lush floral fragrance, and then imagine their spirit ascending as they wonder precisely why they have been laid low by inhaling botanical bliss laced with arsenic. 1 minute they're the belle of the ball, the next they've made an unexpected downward trip to the afterlife, all for a whiff of their favourite scent. Yet, through it all, we can't dismiss the resilience and creativity of those who lived in this era. Georgian women knew they were playing a risky game of survival of the prettiest, armed with knowing winks and a folder marked how to mitigate poisoning. They leaned into the absurdity with grace, like a synchronized swimming team performing complex moves in a toxic pool. Can we all just take a moment to recall the dazzling mockery they made of society's beauty standards? With each painted eyelid and powdered cheek, they flaunted their defiance against conventional wisdom, and that's a point we should raise our cups to. After all, if they could giggle amidst the chaos while dabbing on belladonna to create a seductive allure, we can certainly manage to face our modern-day facials without fear of impending doom. If you think about it, maybe there's a lesson to take from these eccentric pursuits of old. The beauty industry still beckons us today to indulge in countless trends, many of which are fueled less by health and more by the mystique of the unattainable. Just when we rated skincare by its price tag, we might have forgotten that the underlying message was always about self-expression, rather than the richness of the heritage or the value in a swanky bottle. So the next time you slather on some trendy moisturiser, or attempt an avant-garde makeup look guaranteed to wow your friends, raise a glass to the women and men of Georgian times who swirled, sniffed and prettified themselves with grave abandon. They may have left behind a history of accidental poisoning, but they also gifted us with a reminder that beauty in all its absurdity is deeply human. One tiny, or giant, misstep later, we'd all do it again to feel fabulous. Here's to celebrating our questionable traditions. May they always lead us, not to graves, but to laughter, self-love, and the assurance that we're still here, still glam, and still enjoying every delightful moment of this wild ride. Cheers.